Storm is dead. But death is not the end. You've heard it said before that in the beginning there was nothing. But that is a lie. Before the universe, there was oblivion. The only void that could house the end of all things, death, without ceasing to exist. Great artists steal. That is what our universe did. Infinity within eternity. In a sudden burst of immense energy, our universe was born within the oblivion void, always expanding into it, always taking from it. The first great artist. This was but one of many bouts between two cosmic arch-rivals, Eternity and Oblivion. But more on that later. In the present day, in our universe, the eternal storm hovers, legs crossed in the sky, surrounded by dancing lightning bolts, as the spirit that once claimed her life now begs for mercy. For Aegon did save Storm's life just a week ago, but this is not merely Ororo Monroe anymore. This is Eternal Storm. Ororo is not present at the moment. Eternity controls this vessel. Aegon need not be afraid, for he is a spirit, and he will never truly die. But under colossal atmospheric pressure, he'll take a form that can easily be consumed. From there, Eternal Storm makes her way to Doom, shooting down like an arrow fired straight from heaven and wielding a lance made of pure lightning. But Doom is not afraid. He tells Storm that she's the one in danger. She brought a demon to his nation. She is to leave now or face Doom's wrath. She stands her ground and prepares for combat, as each of Storm's footfalls cause rubble to erupt from the ground. Any lesser being would be trembling right now, but Eternity is no stranger to combat. 3 billion years ago, he was in the middle of a conflict just like this. He and his rival, Oblivion, were having a debate. Oblivion was growing weak. His twin Death was encased within him, but he no longer had the strength to contain her. Too much of him had been taken up by Eternity, and so he moved that Eternity become the new house for Death, along with Eternity's twin sister, Infinity. The living tribunal sits above them and judges. He decides that this can only be settled by one way, trial by combat. Eternity calls forth his champion of choice, one of his many creations. Oblivion has made no beings and spawned no heirs, so he will be fighting on his own behalf. For around his waist he wore a belt of the skulls of all of the previous Eternal Champions who had fallen to Oblivion's scythe. 24 victims have fallen in these trials, and this current champion would make 13. This is not just a recounting of one bout between two rivals. This is how death became a part of our universe. And now that Eternity has death on his side, he plans to deliver death to Doom's doorstep. Eternal Storm is not fooled by Dr. Doom's simulacrum. For before the existence of the earth, the sun, or the moon, Eternity was. And now he will teach Doom humility. He raises Storm's hand, and with a snap of her fingers, a horde of Doombots are frozen in place, never to move again, as they are shattered by the lightning lance of the Eternal Storm. In what remains of Doom's castle, the Eternal Storm interrupts Doom's dinner. Doom does not waver, nor does he beg or grovel, because he knows the person who Eternity is controlling. He knows the true Storm, Ororo, who would never take the life of an unarmed man. Eternity, who had sought to teach Doom a lesson in humility, is humbled himself, for try as he might, he can't make Storm's hands commit the act. As Storm's hands tremble, her mouth speaks forward with Eternity's words.
You seem to know my host a great deal. Very well, Victor Von Doom. It seems you have escaped certain death.
Doom is not surprised, for in his eyes, it's Death who evades his wrath. As Eternal Storm retreats, a recent event crosses the mind of the one who now controls Ororo's body. 3 long eons had passed since Oblivion parted with his sister, his twin, Death. His existence has grown cold, lonely, and incomplete without her. Eternity titles himself reasonable and says he's willing to give Death back. But Oblivion is not amused by Eternity's haughty attitude, for there's nowhere left in the Oblivion void for Oblivion to house his sister. Eternity has stretched so far that there's nowhere left for her to go, except where she currently is. Eternity has taken, and yet he eternally hungers for more. It's who he is. But Oblivion is far beyond the point of caring or bargaining. If Eternity exists to expand infinitely, then maybe existence would be better without him. Oblivion moves for Eternity's end, the collapse of the universe, so that he can be reunited with his sister Death and make room for her once more. The living tribunal descends and dispenses justice upon Oblivion. The will of the one above all is for the primordials to always be. Who is Oblivion to question that will and move for the end of eternity? The motion is denied, and Oblivion's right to convene trial by combat permanently revoked. The sentence? For Oblivion to spend all of his existence separated from Death. The 4 primordials deny that such a thing ever happened, but one did see. The one above all did see. So did the living tribunal. They saw as Oblivion shed a tear for his sister, an act so powerful that the one above all was moved. In that instant, a wave of unmitigated empathy echoed throughout all of existence. The Watcher felt it. The Asgardians felt it. Spider-Man's spider senses blared like a fire alarm directly in his ear. And in deep space, the Phoenix felt it. She felt Ororo too. For this was the beginning of a chain of events that would link Eternity and Ororo. The Living Tribunal decided that there would be a trial by combat, one to settle this ancient score once and for all. To the victor, there awaits limitless eons of unbound sovereignty and freedom to house infinity, death, and whatsoever they choose. And the defeated shall be hammered into a speck smaller than an atom, with no room for even a single thought. The Living Tribunal asks Eternity, who will be his eternal champion? Who shall aid the universe? His answer is clear. The one whose will stands unconquerable even now. One who couldn't be defeated by death or eternity. Ororo Munroe is his champion. But she's not in any state to fight. She's recovering from the most traumatic experience that she's felt in a very, very long time. This not only concludes this issue, but Storm's first arc in her solo title. And we got a lot to talk about, so let's get right into the review. As always, the art is phenomenal. My favorite parts are the opening pages that really capture the birth of the universe in a way that I've never seen done before. Using that TV static sort of interference effect to represent the presence of Oblivion is just peak. We watch as it diminishes after the birth of the universe, the birth of eternity. But when he cries later on in the issue, it's his essence that we see scattered throughout reality. A visual reminder that even though you can't see Oblivion, he is everywhere. I also want to shout out the title page. From an artistic standpoint, the level of sharp contrast between Storm's glowing white hair and the dark black background surrounded by all the different shades of blue, white, and black. Also, this is the only time we see her in her regular outfit this issue, since she pretty much spends the whole rest of the time in her Eternal Storm getup. So for everyone who was fiending for some Eternal Storm, you're gonna get it in droves with this issue. I also love Storm's expression here. It's a very controlled sadness. She knows what's going on, but can't do anything about it. It's hard to pick any favorite panels from this issue because there are so many. We've got Storm hovering above Aegon, Storm reaching out with an electrified hand to grab the spherical entity as she devours it, and of course, that damn gulp. Speaking of the outfit again real quick, I always liked it, but now that I've seen it in action, this shit is on point. The way the gold straps wrap around her leg and form an X, the thigh-high boots with the wedge-high heels that have that spike on the back, with a train that flows elegantly in the wind. And she's had many outfits that have had neck adornments before, but this one just takes it to a whole new level. Her mother's red ruby returns, affixed right at the point where the white ends and the gold begins, as it travels up her neck. And of course, there's the facial markings. I can't remember their proper name and I don't want to give it some silly name, so I'll just put the actual name on the screen in post. But I think they make a great touch here. And the fact that they're not just paint, but actually glowing like bits of energy shining forth out of her face. And the fact that the big one on her forehead is like a third eye and she's sitting here meditating almost in a perfect lotus fashion. Yeah, I think this is my favorite page, definitely. Honorary mention for the gulp. And social media is most definitely gonna meme that shit to bejesus and back. Prepare to see this everywhere for the next several years. I also love her anime style charge and descend maneuver when she confronts Doom. She literally becomes an arrow of lightning. The lightning lance is also a nice touch. I do wish we could have seen more of it, but I highly doubt this will be its last appearance. Small note, thank you Morewa and crew for not limiting her to lightning in combat. But the greatest power flex in this issue is her willpower. She was the host body for eternity, and yet when he tried to make her act out of her own nature by trying to kill Doom, Storm just straight up said no. Let that sink in. Eternity itself wasn't strong enough to force Storm to do something she didn't want to do.
She's the mother. She is Mother Earth. She is Mother Gaia. She is your mother.
Not only did Doom know Ororo well enough to know how to coax her powers out of her, but he also knew that she would never attack someone who posed no threat. Only someone of Doom's confidence could pull that off. Also, that line about death evading Doom might just be the coldest piece of dialogue in this series so far. Storm's fight with the Doom bots was understandably one-sided. This is Storm we're talking about here, and Eternal Storm at that, but I do wish we got more of a proper fight. So maybe next time they throw down, it'll be a proper Doom versus Storm fight. But either way, in a couple months, we'll be seeing Storm put her divine skills to the test among 5 other thunder gods from different pantheons. First we got Thor, who obviously needs no introduction, but some of these other names may not be as familiar to everyone, so let's go over them real quick. Going from left to right, we have Chak, the Mayan god of lightning, thunder, and rain, Shango, an Orisha from the Yoruba pantheon, who presides over thunder, lightning, fire, justice, dance, and virility, Susanoo, the Japanese god of storms and the sea, who's also known by his full title, Susanoo no Mikoto, and Mama Ragan, the aboriginal god of lightning and thunder, who speaks forth pure thunder and is also known as Namar Khan. Apologies for any mispronunciations. Chak and Susanoo are part of the video game Smite, which includes over 130 gods, legends, and mythical figures as characters. And that's where I get the okay sound effect from that you've probably heard me use in several videos. But I can't wait to see Storm interact with all these lightning boys. Almost sounds like the name of a band, Storm and the Lightning Boys. But of course, everything going on with Storm is only half of this issue. The other half is this cosmic political debate / rivalry that's been going on between Eternity and Oblivion. For those who aren't tapped into that side of things, this might be a bit of a hard read. Now thankfully Murewa is very aware of this fact, and so he writes things to where you can be completely green when it comes to this type of stuff and still follow along. All the flashbacks and cutaways are woven seamlessly into the very fabric of the story, and everything you see on the cosmic scale is either thematically or narratively relevant. It also vastly broadens the scope of powerful beings in the Marvel Universe for those who may have considered regular gods as peak. Like all those names that I just rattled off back there, all those gods from real Earth religions and pantheons, those gods would all be atomized by the beings that we see in this issue alone, and that ain't even all of them. Starting, of course, with the one above all, who I'll just refer to as Toa for the rest of this video. Toa is the creator of all that is, ever was, and ever will be. In basic religious terms, Toa is the God, Big G, the God of all gods, all creations, and all concepts. Toa exists completely separate from everyone and everything, while simultaneously being a part of everything that exists. But in terms of the type of beings we're talking about here, even the term God feels way too small for the one above all. Toa has no single form, no distinguishable characteristics beyond whatever form is assumed at any given time. Then you've got the primordials, which are cosmic beings that exist as abstract concepts. The ones we see during this issue are eternity, infinity, oblivion, death, and the living tribunal, who answers directly to Toa. And similar to the one above all, they don't have set static bodies, as we saw in the issue when Oblivion turned from a Grim Reaper to a giant translucent space snake. And as I'm sure you've gathered from their names, they all represent and embody different concepts within reality. For example, death is the sentient embodiment of death in the multiverse, and eternity is the multiverse. So stuff didn't start to die until Eternity willingly chose to consume death into himself. Now all of this cosmic lore is great, but what I'm really here for is the messiness. The melodrama is peak upon peak. It's very much a cosmic soap opera, which, if you're familiar with ancient mythology, is totally on brand. All because Eternity is being a little piss goblin and refuses to let Death go back to her brother Oblivion. We really see a side of Eternity here that stands in stark contrast to his benevolent, altruistic form that we'd all assume he'd have here. We learn that his interest in Storm really had more to do with his ongoing feud with Oblivion. He's really very selfish and greedy, and he just takes and takes and takes. Tell me this don't fit in right with all them old musty divine folk. Moral of the story, kids, anything that can be considered a god is probably really petty. Except for Toa. Toa seems pretty dope. And as always, if you're more familiar with the cosmic side of Marvel than I am, feel free to correct anything that I've gotten wrong in the comments. Plot-wise, this book was mostly solid. Although, again, your mileage will vary depending on how much you care about the grander cosmic side of the Marvel Universe. But I do like how they cut back and forth between Storm's fight with Doom and Eternity's ongoing feud with Oblivion. That was way more effective than if they had just dumped it all on us at once. And keeping with the trend I started in the last recap review, I want to touch on some of the pushback that this issue has spurred on social media. Storm's elevation has sparked controversy in the greater X-Men fandom once again, as it always does. Really, the greater Marvel fandom in general. And I'd even argue the greater comic book reading fandom. It's always a loud vocal minority of fans who push back against this type of stuff. Whether they're bigger fans of Jean Grey, Wanda, or even other Storm fans who feel like she's just getting quote-unquote too big. It's basically the "is Storm really an Omega level mutant" argument all over again. Only so much worse because now the girl got her own book and they still won't be quiet. But for anyone who thinks that Storm is too strong now, too powerful, too untouchable, too flawless, I must refer you to the closing page. The final page of this book is a stark reminder of Storm's most persistent struggle, something that we even saw back in issue 4, her need for freedom and autonomy. Recent Storm appearances have been criticized for being OP, too strong, nothing holding her back, etc, etc, etc. And the one area where I think this is apparent is in regards to her claustrophobia, which was once a cornerstone of her character. And yeah, she really doesn't deal with claustrophobia like that anymore. At least, not on the surface. The last time I recall her having a bout of actual claustrophobia was back in the 2010s in X-Men Gold, back when she was thrown in solitary confinement while wearing a power dampener. And before that, it happened during the Black Panther run during the final fight against the adversary in Wakanda. Now, because her claustrophobia is really not addressed that much anymore, I can see how someone could think that she just doesn't deal with it at all. But the more you read the text, the more you see how much it's still a thing. And what I mean by that is this. Murewa takes the core feeling behind Storm's claustrophobia and applies it to new situations. Because at its core, it's really not about the claustrophobia itself, at least not to me. The whole thing is a traumatic memory and PTSD surrounding the onset of her claustrophobia and the thematic relevance of said claustrophobia to Storm as a character that really matters. So when we see Doom trapping her with magic in issue 4, or when we see her body tremble while being controlled by Eternity here, we know that that's her need for freedom and autonomy and her indomitable will springing forth. And let's be real here, being trapped and controlled is brought to a whole new level in this issue. It's basically the inverse of that time she was turned into a living statue by Doom dialed up to infinity. That time, she was forced to exist without movement. Here, she has all the movement and can come and go as she pleases, only she's not in control. Eternity is, while her consciousness just takes a back seat. This confines Ororo to the ultimate prison. And with that in mind, it's no surprise that she was a complete mess by the end. Yeah, she is alive again and she has control of her body again, but she had to make the true ultimate sacrifice to do it. And it wasn't even a sacrifice she chose to make. Instead, she was manipulated by Dr. Doom into a lose-lose situation, one that resulted in an ancient spirit coming forth out of nowhere to claim her life. And this was a spirit that she had no way of anticipating or even understanding beforehand. So before anyone goes and says, Storm is perfect now, she's OP, remember, the literal embodiment of Eternity yanked the wheel of control of her body after she had been duped into breaking an oath that was given to a spirit on her behalf, and all of this came on the back of her body dying as a result of her simply being what she's always been, a compassionate, caring person. And if that ain't a serious cross to bear, then I don't know what is. It's just like Ashake told her during Resurrection of Magneto, there are forces to which even a goddess must bow. Tell me in the comments, how did you like this issue? Do you feel like Storm is overpowered? Let me know in the comments below. And then click on this video right here to get some more Weather Witch goddessness in your life. And until next time, keep simping.